Hello. So, um, as kind of an apology for being late with the return of Kara the Brave after it went on vacation hiatus, I wrote a story. It's a short story. It looks a lot longer than it is because it has big font. Ooh, don't read that. Don't read that. So I'm gonna read it. One thing that is important to know is that I cannot do a proper Christopher Lee impression. He does not actually appear in the story, although that would be cool. But his voice makes an appearance in the story. You'll understand why it's not in the slightest bit subtle. Um, Also, oh, what was the other thing? Oh, yeah, okay, in case you haven't read any of the Facebook status updates as I wrote this, this takes place before Kara the Brave. In Kara the Brave, Kara is 11. In this, which is a short story called Kara and the Dragon, Kara is 10. And I wasn't planning on this, but it kind of ended up just turning into, like, I guess almost like an origin story, and I really like it. And so this is probably the most enjoyable apology I've ever done. So yeah, weird, huh? Okay, I shall now read it. Kara and the Dragon. There lived, in the back corner of the props room of the junior high drama department in Kara's school, a dragon. It wasn't a real dragon, Kara knew, but it was lifelike enough that she was sure it would change its mind about existing at any moment. Which meant someone was going to have to slay it. And probably before it had a chance to go on a murderous rampage. Yeah, that would be a good idea. Kara had brought the topic up with some of the junior high kids, seeing as she was only 10, and thinking that they would understand their responsibility to protect the school, but none of them took her seriously. The dragon, they told her, had been used last year in a play, and it could only move if there were 2 students inside making it happen. She got very tired of this, and also tired of trying to explain that she knew this. She was there. All of the elementary students had to go to the play because the teacher thought it would be a fun way to promote school spirit, and anyone who knew anything would know that the dragon was only 2 junior hires in a big costume. That wasn't the point. The point was that it was a dragon, and that someone had to slay it. For real, and not just as pretend for an audience. But the junior hires would just laugh at her and tell her to bug off. Well, fine then, she muttered to herself as she got off the bus and walked home. If you're not going to do anything, I will. First things first, she had to make preparations, which meant she had to have a proper dragon-slaying outfit. Something intimidating. Something cool. Claiming to have math homework, Kara shut herself into her room as soon as she got home and started sketching. It wasn't that the existence of math homework was a lie. She really did have some of that, but Kara was good at math, and, it never really took her long to finish it. What she took liberties with was the actual amount of said homework, thereby guaranteeing a good amount of time before her mom would insist she go outside and get some fresh air. And, as everyone knows, once a mother sends a child outside, she expects that child to perform maneuvers of the exercise variety, of which sketching is not a member. Kara did do her homework first, though. She would have felt guilty otherwise. But then, sketching. A cape would be a good idea. No matter what that one character in that one movie said, capes are always intimidating, especially if they're red. Yeah, a red cape would be totally cool. Okay, what else? Kara didn't have anything that would work as a helmet, but she just learned how to make paper crowns. If she made a really pointy yellow one, the dragon would have to take her seriously. Okay, so far so good. What about the rest? She thought about making armor of some kind, but she remembered seeing something on TV about knights and how it was always hot inside their suits of armor. She thought it would be hard to feel like a hero when all you wanted was to take off your armor and cool down. And although she was loath to forego the protection it would afford, she decided she could make up for it with the brightest shirt she had and her newest pair of jeans. So, markers in hand, She made the legs of her picture self blue and drew the orange edges onto what would otherwise have been a white t-shirt. Then there were the shoes. Kara had only one pair of these, so that part was easy. White and gray and big loops for the laces. Perfect. She admired her handiwork, then got a piece of tape and hung up the picture on the wall next to her bed so that she would remember the next day what to bring. Now it was time to find out the best way to slay dragons. For that, Kara needed to consult some experts. She found her mom in the kitchen, making something mostly unidentifiable, but she knew she was going to have to eat for supper anyways. Mom, how do you kill a dragon? Can you wait until supper? I can answer you then. Kara shook her head. Her mom tasted the dish, scrunched up her face, and then added a generous handful of diced jalapenos. Well, I'm busy right now, dear. Go ask your father. So Kara went to find her dad. He was in his office, attempting to balance his checkbook with a large rock by the use of a rickety scale made up of office supplies. He had given up on the usual method about an hour ago. Needless to say, Kara had not inherited her math acumen from him. Dad, how do you kill a dragon? With a sword, probably, he said with a bit of a laugh. Kara decided to ignore that bit. I don't have a sword, she said, frowning. Well, that's a problem, then. Her dad thought for a moment. Then he stood and pulled a book off one of the bookshelves. This might help. It was a book all about dragons. Kara was delighted. Thanks, Dad. She sped off to her room as quickly as she could to pore over the book. She had to run back to her dad a few times for clarification, during which she also learned how torches are made and the difference between the Catholic and Protestant Bibles, but by the end of it, she had a solid strategy in place. The next morning, Kara packed her backpack full carefully with her costume, lunch, and a container of a concoction she had made the night before. It was mostly butter, but it also had stirred in some of her hair from when she brushed it, and a tablespoon of pine sap. This mixture she had put in a Tupperware container borrowed from the kitchen, and then put into a Ziploc bag just in case. It wouldn't do to have battle a dragon with a stained shirt now, would it? All during class, Kara went through her plan over and over in her mind. She'd never slain a dragon before, and she wanted to make sure she got it right. Not to mention that getting things wrong in a dragon fight had a tendency of ending badly for the would-be slayer, even if the dragon in question still hadn't made up its mind about the state of its existence. When lunch recess started, Kara went to work. To throw off teacher suspicion, she went outside for a few moments, then asked to be let in to go to the bathroom. Can't you hold it? The supervising teacher asked. Kara just shook her head and did an excellent impression of a pea dance. Sighing, the teacher let her in, and she ran to her classroom, grabbed her backpack and a meter stick, then went to the bathroom to change. Then she went to the junior high wing, which was also mostly empty as all the junior hires gathered in the cafeteria for lunch. If the dragon had decided to be a proper dragon just then, they would all be the first to suffer, Kara was certain. They were just too easy a target to ignore. When she got to the props room, she unzipped her backpack, took the container out of its bag, and made sure it would be easy to grab when she needed it. Once she was satisfied, she made sure her cape and crown would stay in place, and held the meter stick like she'd seen knights hold spears and pictures in her dad's book. Then she opened the door, put her backpack inside, and made an entrance. The real fight that followed wasn't at all interesting, and it isn't worth telling. But Kara made up for that with the help of her imagination, and the result was something like this. As she approached the back corner of the props room, the dragon lay there, the shadows filled with its coils, the burning embers of its eyes attentive to her every move. So, you have come thinking you can slay me. The dragon spoke with the voice of Christopher Lee, because Kara had seen a few scenes of him as Saruman in Lord of the Rings, and had decided that his was the scariest voice ever. Pshh, she said, knowing that the last thing you should show to a dragon is fear. I know I can slay you. The dragon would have chuckled if Kara hadn't remembered in time that that was a cliché, so it rumbled instead and spit some sparks that went out before they caught on anything. Well, aren't you cocky, said the dragon. How old are you, little girl? Shouldn't you be at home with your mother, playing with your dollies and picking out the colors for your future wedding? Its body writhed in the darkness, visible only as scales glinted in the light of those fiery eyes. Tears came to Kara's eyes, but she kept them hidden. That was another thing you weren't supposed to let dragons see. Weaknesses. You're not going to hurt anyone in this school. Is that so? And are you the one who will make sure this happens? The dragon's breath was smoky now. Kara could see spirals of it coming out from the shadows. Yes. Kara's grip on her spear tightened. Then I suppose we should get on with it. At this, the dragon entered reality with a suddenness that made the whole room shake. Then, from the shadows, shot out a great maw full of teeth. Kara barely had enough time to duck before it reached her, and she put up an arm to protect herself as the yards of the dragon's neck sped above her. The scales were rough and hard, and gave her a burn across her left forearm near the elbow. Claws came next, slicing through the air like giant scissors come alive and turn malevolent. They came at her with deadly accuracy, swiping inwards. Kara leapt to the side, banging into a cabinet and scraping her knee. It stung, and she clenched her teeth at the pain, but she got up just in time to see that the dragon had looped its head around and come at her again. Its eyes were wide and wild, its teeth wet and glistening, and its face was wreathed by a fringe of spikes and a pair of black, curling horns. Kara swung at it with her spear, smacking it across the eye hard enough to make it falter. The dragon roared, smoke pouring from its mouth. Spying her backpack across the room, Kara took off towards it, but the dragon snapped at her and caught her cape on one of its teeth. She fell again on the knee she'd banged earlier. A hole opened up in the fabric of her jeans and her knee was covered in blood. Her cape was still caught in the dragon's mouth. She could feel the tug as it wound its way towards her. Don't turn your back to the enemy, Kara reminded herself. Make sure you can see what they're doing. She turned, the movement made awkward by her entrapped cape, and faced the dragon. Its head swayed from side to side as it stepped closer and closer, uncoiling from the darkness, its face a sinister, open-mouthed grimace, and its eyes bright as burning coals. Kara couldn't get up, but she could crawl backwards, so she did, spear in hand. She couldn't go any farther from the dragon than her cape would allow, but with the dragon approaching like it was, she had plenty of room for maneuverability. At that moment, the last of the dragon's great length slid from the shadows. It filled the room, a mass of mobile sinuosity, wings spread out like an eclipse. Even in her worst nightmares, Kara hadn't seen anything so huge and so perfectly shaped as to elicit the terror of anyone who beheld it, no matter how hardened, no matter how brave. Not that Kara was feeling particularly brave at that moment. Her back hit the wall near the door, and she had an almost overwhelming desire to undo her cape and escape right then and there, but the dragon placed a massive limb right in front of the exit. Thin wisps curled up from smiling lips as the dragon came closer and closer. There was nothing else to be done. Kara got herself into position, and then, as the dragon's mouth opened even wider than she had thought possible, she rushed forward, spear held out before her, and aimed into the dragon's throat. The next thing she knew, Kara found herself face to face with the dragon, her spear arm almost entirely in its mouth, clutching tight to the spear which had gone past the dragon's teeth, down into its stomach. "You stupid girl," the dragon said, and the fact that its voice was muffled by the spear didn't make it any less terrifying. "Letting yourself get so close to the mouth of a dragon. You know what we do with our mouths, don't you?" Where was her backpack? It should have been close by, but no matter how Kara searched for it with her free hand, she couldn't find it. If she could just turn her head and look, she knew she would be able to get it easily, but she dared not break the dragon's gaze. The dragon smiled. "We break, we crunch, we gnaw, we crush, we gobble, we crack, until the blood flows and the flesh is ribbons and the bones are ground to a powder. And," here its voice dropped to a smoky whisper, "and we breathe fire." With that, it started swelling horrifically, and Kara knew she didn't have much time left. Her heart was pounding out of control, and she was groping frantically in every direction except the right one. I can feel the blood pumping through you, little girl. I can feel it race like an animal caught in a trap. Oh, you silly, silly girl, thinking you could defeat me, as if you mattered. You should have left your blanket at home, the stick where you found it, and the paper uncut and untaped. You can't be a hero. You are afraid. I can smell it, and it is sweet. Its throat and belly began to glow, lit from within, and Kara could feel her spear getting hot. It's why the other children won't play with you, you know. You think too much of yourself. You just won't stay in your place. At those words, Kara went cold and almost lost her grip on her spear. Then she found something. At first, she had thought it was the edge of her cape, which is why it had taken so long to find, but now she realized what it was. One of the straps on her backpack. Still staring straight into the dragon's eyes, Kara pulled that strap until the backpack was close enough for her to reach in. Then she pulled out her secret weapon, opened it, and threw it straight down into the beast's gullet. "What?" the dragon cried. "What have you done? What have you done?" Kara let go of the spear and threw herself to the ground as the dragon thrashed above her, trying to spit up the container and its contents. It tried in vain. Kara had thrown it too far in for it to ever come out. The dragon let out a belch of flame, but the poison had sapped its strength, and the fires could do nothing to Kara or the room around them. Seeing this, the dragon's eyes widened, its limbs shook, and it fell to the floor. When the light in its eyes faded to black, Kara knew it was dead. And then, still lying on the ground, covered by one of the dragon's lifeless coils, Kara cried. And cried, and cried. But it was a good cry, the kind that makes you feel better afterwards, rather than worse. One of the junior high teachers found her like this, knee scraped, a hole in the red blanket she wore with one end tied around her neck. Under a dragon prop, a meter stick stuck straight through it, and its inside smeared with a greasy mixture of butter, hair, and tree sap. The teacher, thinking Kara had been the victim of a nasty prank, helped her sit up and calm down. Upon hearing a description of what actually happened, though, the teacher brought Kara straight to the office, gave her band-aids for the carpet burn on her arm and the scraped knee, and called her parents. Kara's dad, who worked close to the school, ended up picking her up and driving her home. He listened to her story with sympathy and smiled at her description of the battle with the dragon. He kept listening as she got more and more excited about how she defeated the dragon, and complimented her on her masterful use of strategy. Kara grinned, and kept grinning, all the way through the rest of the afternoon, all the way through a very spicy supper, and all through a lesson from her parents on why, if you must slay dragons, it was probably best to use a method that wasn't quite so messy. She grinned herself right to bed, where she lay on her back and stared at the ceiling until her eyes had adjusted to the dark, and she could see the cape and crown that hung up on one of the hooks by her door, and, leaning against the wall beneath them, a wooden sword her dad had made and given her that evening. It was to facilitate more effective dragon killing, he said, and then he dubbed her Kara the Dragon Slayer. Kara's mom had just shook her head at the both of them during the presentation and smiled, while Kara had stared at the sword in awe. Now, in her warm bed, and with sleep just around the corner, Kara couldn't wait for what her nighttime adventures would bring. For the dragon was dead, and her classmates were safe once again. The end. Yeah, so I hope that was an effective, apology. And hope you liked the story. I obviously did, and smiling like crazy. Yeah. And now you know where all of Kara's everything came from, I guess, except for the actually legitimately magical happenings that are going on, because those are real. Yes. Anyways. Alright, until next time, I guess. Bye.